Welcome. This session is basically about group objects in eViews. Now, if you recall, in the previous session we were talking about series objects. Each series essentially referred to a single economic concept or a single unit of time series data, or data if you like. When we're talking about groups in eViews, by contrast, we're talking about a set of series. Or if you like, a time series matrix, or a grouping of series, an arbitrary grouping of series, which is up to you to define. Now, what we're going to do in this session is learn how to create groups and manipulate groups and extract stylized facts about the members of the group. Okay, so the first thing is to learn how to create a group, and as in the previous session for the series command, you can easily just do that by taking advantage of the group command, which I'm going to do now. And just simply say group G1, for example, representing the first group, and notice that it just creates basically immediately an empty group with no members. So now the question becomes, how do we insert members into it? Well, in order to do that, there are a number of ways, but perhaps the easiest way is to view the group members. And here, what you can do is simply type in the names of the members. That's firstly. So we just call it RGDP of Fiji, if you remember. RGDP of Australia, AUS. And now if I view the spreadsheet, it immediately asks me, well, I've made changes to the groups, meaning that I've added those two time series to the membership, and now it wants to record that for you. And immediately what's happened now is that it's put into this group G1 the two series RGDP Fiji and RGDP of Australia. Now there's one thing you need to keep in mind here, is that a group is a link to a series, so that if you actually change the underlying series, the group will change automatically. So if I make edits or changes to real GDP of Australia in the series object, it will be reflected in the group object, as you would expect. So in some sense, group members are linked to the original series objects, or to the actual series objects in the work file. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is simply to select, basically, by holding first the control key down. I now am going to select real GDP of Fiji, followed by the real GDP of Australia. I'm keeping the control key down all the time. I'll also add the real exchange rate of Fiji, and finally the sugar output from Fiji. So I've selected 4 series in that particular order. I'll right click, and basically at this point open as a group, and you'll notice now that essentially I've ended up creating a new group with 4 series simply by selecting the series and opening them up as a group. At this point, you might be wondering how we actually saved the group into the work file. Well, as soon as I tried to close it, eViews picks up that it hasn't been solved in the work file, allows you to give it a name, and at which point I'll call that G2 to indicate essentially that we now have a new group in the work file called G2, which has 4 series in it. Now notice, again, if I click on it, immediately up comes the second group. Okay. Now suppose we go back and then open up the G2 grouping. The first thing I want you to appreciate is that eViews picks up the fact that immediately picks up that you're using more than one series in this view, and it adjusts essentially all the tabs to reflect the fact that you're manipulating, or potentially going to manipulate, more than one series. And what I mean by that is that these menu tabs here are now being set up to basically allow you to manipulate more than one series at the same time. Okay, so when it comes to, for example, descriptive statistics, we can pick a common sample. For example, let me just pick common sample, meaning that it'll find the sample where there are no missing values across the 4 series. You'll notice that immediately it started to do a basic statistics on the 4 series, each of them with 24 observations, because that's the only period over which it found there was only 24 observations in the period over which they all had valid numbers. Okay, so that's noticing view. descriptive statistic, or you can relax the requirement that you have common samples and use individual samples, and this shows immediately that real GDP of Fiji and Australia do not have any missing values over that sample period, but obviously the real exchange rate and sugar output do. The real exchange rate having 10 less valid observations, and sugar output having 20 in this case. Now, we can also you can do cross-correlation if you wish and put in lags, and it'll start to do cross-correlation for you across all of these series. Notice here it's basically correlating Fiji with lags of Australian Fiji and leads. And that's essentially that's the idea, is that once we have a group, we can treat them as we can start to do multivariate types of analysis across these series and extract salient features about the groupings of the group of the series. Okay, so another one that, just for fun, maybe if I show you, is the graph type, basic type, line and symbol. You can actually have multiple graphs very quickly, and up comes the series individually on separate graphs, which may be helpful for you to see the overall features of the data. And as you can see there, it really is showing sugar output of Fiji is going in the negative direction compared to the overall growth of real GDP from Fiji. So that's the basics of creating a group in eViews. And as you can see, its basic purpose is to collect together series that you might analyze as a group, or what I like to call or as a time series matrix. And obviously, when we get to regression, you have to realize that, when we get to regression, essentially what you're really doing is working with a group of series, or an underlying group of series. So this is the group, the group object actually is very, very important as a way of organizing your data in eViews. Thank you.